Namaste, friends. This is part 2 of my conversation with Rajiv Malhotra on his latest book, Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Power. It's another bombshell, and I recommend that all of you order a copy and prepare yourself for the future awaiting us. Okay, Rajiv, one of the very intriguing terms you use in this book is crash of civilizations. We are familiar with the term clash of civilizations, but you have introduced a new term, crash of civilizations, with an R. Could you please describe this in your own inimitable way to the viewers of this channel?
I'm glad you picked this up. When I do a book, it goes through several drafts and many working titles. So at one point in time, early on, the title was going to be Crash of Civilization. Publisher after publisher said, nay, 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 people don't want to have this. No, what are all this bullshit? So so I put it inside the book rather than on the cover. But,
I really wish you had kept it
it's a powerful
because
term.
it's a very powerful term and it would have caught more eyeballs.
But the thing is, I'm writing a whole series of these books. This is just the first bombshell. So I'll elaborate on the different ones, make smaller books and elaborate on different points. Now, we know clash of civilizations with the L refers to, the West versus Islam and the civilization A versus B having a clash. Crash with the R is the civilization crashing. So what do I mean by civilization crashing? Right now, the civilization is held in a delicate equilibrium with many, many forces. So the haves and have-nots have reached an equilibrium. The haves are employer, the other guys are employees, or maybe some countries are haves and they have a donor recipient relationship. So there's some kind of balance, or let's say in a family, somebody has got power, some dominant person in the family, others are subservient, but they find a balance. Now, what happens is that balances disrupt and fall apart when there is a new force that gives them unequal benefit. AI is going to have unequal impact. So even if A and B are held in balance today through some means, or maybe A is above, B is below, but they're held in a balance. When artificial intelligence comes, somebody gets to be much more powerful than they were, and the other person does not get the same benefit. Some take advantage of weapons more than others. So when cannons came, not everybody or not every army got all these cannons right away. Some armies like Babur brought cannons to India, So similarly, every weapon has had that effect. Every breakthrough in technology has unequal impact. Therefore, equilibriums fall apart. The delicately held equilibriums fall apart. So the crash of civilization refers to a kind of a disequilibrium that society will go through. And this disequilibrium has never happened before, because in this disequilibrium, the basic challenge will be that we do not need so much labor. We have machines that can do this work cheaper, better. They don't fall ill. There are a lot of human problems that don't exist with machines. So you will have an argument that maybe the world needs to be depopulated. And I'm convinced that this argument will happen. Not that we need to kill people and holocaust them, but somehow maybe we need to have policies against too many babies. We need to eat. But the point is this: let's say right now the world is 8 billion. It's going to be 10, 12 billion later in this century. But with AI, you could run the whole world with only 1 billion people. You do not need that many people. India, from 1.3 billion is going to go to 1.5 or 6 later on. But 200 million, 300 million people, properly educated, good infrastructure, can run this country perfectly well. India used to have no more than 300 million people during the British era. We've become 4 times the population. The bottom half is not very productive. The bottom half have to be looked after.
But in India, even the top half is not productive.
India's top half is...
I'm sorry. They are a liability and they are causing the so-called bottom half to sink deeper than ever before. So I don't think in India the problem is of the bottom half. The bottom half will somehow still scrape through because they are at least hardworking, some of them. But the top half are parasitic.
that is correct. But the AI brings a very interesting problem. If we don't have enough AI, we have a problem. If we have too much AI, we have a problem. So let me explain. If we don't have enough AI, China will eat our lunch. China, Pakistan will finish us off. We will not be competitive in weaponry. We will not be competitive in intellectual warfare, psychological warfare, all the things we talked about in the previous episode. The Breaking India 2.0 forces will get the better of us. So on the one hand, we need a lot of AI. We need AI to be on par with the rest of the world. If they have cannons, we need to have cannons. That's the case for having a lot of AI, and we need to catch up. And I agree with that. But then, if we have a lot of AI, we also create obsolescence of jobs. A lot of things that required, human beings to do. So now, in the United States also, Amazon has taken over small shops, and now the people who used to work in a retail shop are now working in an Amazon warehouse, just packing things, or they're running Amazon trucks, delivery trucks. But then people in AI, I have some people who work for Amazon in AI and robotics, and they tell me that there is a huge investment to automate the warehouse so that you don't need people there. So first, the people who are doing the retailing are out of work, and a subset of them get jobs in warehouse. Now the jobs in warehouse will be given to robots. Similarly, Amazon is experimenting already with delivery, where the delivery will be through drones and through various means that you won't need human drivers. There'll be driverless cars, driverless trucks. So you see, what is happening is this advent of AI is creating an economy of not only haves and have-nots, but less need for labor. The people who respond to this say that, well, we'll create service jobs. There'll be more people doing massage, and there'll be more people who will be emotional companions and all of that. So that is fine, but that's more like turning human beings into pets. That you have these people, you need to feed them, so let's have them do some let's have these soft skills, and then we can justify giving them some work. This may last for a while, but in the long run, the effect of tremendous amount of scale of efficiency is going to disempower human labor. You won't even need so much human labor.
But see, we expected the same from computers.
Yes.
And that's why unions everywhere, especially in India, in the bank sector, for example, went on strike after strike opposing computerization.
Right.
The fact is that computers have not taken away jobs, they created many more new jobs. We all thought that with the coming of Amazon and Flipkart and all these malls, the neighborhood kirana store would just vanish out of existence. That hasn't happened. In fact, they're doing better business than ever before. The local markets are still flooded with customers. It's not as if they've gone deserted, at least not in India. Go to Chandni Chowk, go to Karol Bagh. Even today, during pandemic, the moment they freed the restrictions somewhat, there were stampedes in the markets. It's not as if people were happy just purchasing everything online.
Yeah. So some of these trends are delayed coming to India. But let me just give you a concrete, since you've raised an issue, let me give you a concrete example of the impact of automation. So let's take the automobile industry, which employs around 4 million, 5 million people in India. India is not only making cars, but making auto parts, which are exported. India is one of the largest exporters of automobile parts. All the big auto manufacturers, GM, Chrysler, all the European ones, the Japanese ones, they buy parts from India. So it employs a large number of people. Now the automobile is going to be replaced with electric cars. Electric cars are not industrial internal combustion engine. You don't need an engine. You have a battery. So the spark plug you don't need. The carburetor you don't need. Some little knob, some little screw here. A car engine has got hundreds of parts, little parts, and a lot of small scale, medium scale people are manufacturing these parts. So as the world shifts to electric vehicles, India also shifting to electric vehicles. Of course, people like Mahindra will make money because they'll be in the electric vehicle business. But all these small ancillary walas will be out of work. So I've even talked to the automobile industry type people to see if they want to come on the show and address it. They are afraid to deal with this issue. They're hiding from this issue. But what will happen to the few million workers who are involved in the automobile sector when the industry shifts to electric cars? So let me now explain what the electric car is. The engine of the electric car is a battery. This battery is the lithium ion battery. And China has 50% of the world's supply of lithium. And China made this bet long ago, like one of many bets, that the future is going to be this. So they started investing in R&D. They own most of the patents, most of the technology for making this battery, because the batteries has to become more and more efficient, less and less weight, have charge for lasting more and more miles. That is the race to make the battery better and better. So India will be dismantling an industry which is 100% indigenized. We do not, nobody needs to import to learn how to build a carburetor or a spark plug or any of that. Indians know how to do that because this technology is very old. So yes, of course, it's polluting. And there's an argument for replacing this car with, electric car. That's a good argument. But I'm just trying to tell you what's the side effect, which hasn't been considered. The side effect is we are dismantling an old technology, an old industry, which is 100% indigenous and employs a lot of people. And we're replacing it with a new technology, which is going to be made in China. So you're going to dismantle the jobs in India and create jobs in China. So China will make money two ways. One is it'll give you the raw material to the lithium, because they have 50% of the world market. Second is that you have to buy it under license from them. So I know a lot of people are saying we are manufacturing lithium batteries in India, but we are manufacturing with Chinese technology. And so in 5 years or in 2 years, this technology will be obsolete. So you may say, yeah, I under the terms, I owe them royalty for a little while, then it's mine. But the point is that this technology is galloping ahead. The rate at which the lithium technology is advancing, it has a lot to do with the use of AI in its advancement. So the faster it can advance, the more rapidly, the better it gets at replacing the internal combustion engine. So the example I'm giving you is that as technologies are replaced by newer technologies, it is not necessarily the case that those new technologies are indigenous in India. The new technologies may be from foreign. Even the computerization, it took several years for India to indigenize the computers, because the computerization, it happened, but in the beginning, they were all foreign computers. Even now, the heart of the computer, which is the silicon, which is the semiconductor, the processor, is imported. India does not have any worthwhile semiconductor industry. So while we say these are made in India computers, they are assembled in India. The body is India, the keyboard and all these things are made in India. But the actual electronic engine, the semiconductor, is largely imported. So we have become dependent on this. Industry makes money by improving its efficiency. And if you have the capital intensive, so now let's talk about economics here. This is a matter of fact that in my book, I've documented the source also. For every 10% increase in GDP of India, however long it takes, whether over that many years or whenever the GDP goes up by a total of 10%, the 10% increase in GDP in India results in only 1% increase in employment. So this means that the GDP is growing with capital and mechanization and industry and machinery, not with more labor. So when somebody is making 100 rupees worth of GDP and now he's going to make 110 rupees worth of GDP, if he had 100 employees, he'll not have 110 employees, he'll have only 101 employees. So what this growth in GDP is doing is it's top heavy. It is foreign FDI. People are championing FDI. FDI doesn't help the small industry or the small street vendor. FDI goes to the Sensex people, the big corporations. They get the FDI, and they get the GDP growth, and that does not necessarily help the.
Except if you invest in agriculture, there the ratio is much higher. The ratio of employment per GDP growth figures.
So let's look at agriculture. Agriculture and related village economy, rural economies is almost like 50% of Indians are dependent on that. But the contribution to GDP is 15%. So it means that the economic contribution to India is 15%. But on that 15% economic contribution, 50% of the people have to get their livelihood. So this is why there is a huge farming crisis, because there's an overabundance of labor. And when the industrial revolution happened in other countries, they mechanized their farms and turned them into manufacturing. And then from one level of manufacturing to the next level and so on. India has not had its first industrial revolution in the sense of moving people from farms, because we cannot move them from farms since there are not enough jobs. It's not that these people want to stay in farms. I know a lot of migrant workers, they work in domestic as domestic servants, and my mother has several, and I talk to them and I know them very well. And their family situation is that back at home, the farming is not a productive, economically productive activity. They'll come to the, even if they are good landowners, some of them are good landowners, they'll rather come and work as a driver or a maid or something in the city, because they can at least eat, and they can earn a livelihood. So this overpopulation, India, one of the big problems of India is there is an overpopulation, there is a surplus population, and as there is more and more automation, you're going to find more and more pressure that to keep these people going.
But Rajiv, India has gone through many crash of civilizations. Would you not agree? Invasions, the Islamic invasions, then British colonization, or the, you know, all these phases for last 1,000 years. Wouldn't you say this will be yet one more?
No, but it has also been shrinking. You look.
That's right.
Okay,
It crashed.
it's shrinking.
Shrank.
It's shrinking. It's lost territory. It's lost at least the Bharatiya share. Bharatiya civilization has shrunk. Maybe at one time. One time you would have Central Asia and Tibet and all the way down to Sri Lanka, and from Afghanistan all the way to Bali. So if you are happy with a shrinking outlook.
No, I'm not happy. I'm saying we've already had so many crashes and shrinking and disorientation.
Yes.
Just loss of direction, loss of selfhood.
Yes.
Now, what you are
Is
predicting
another big one.
ahead of us
Is another big one.
is, yes, another big one, because we are as little prepared for it as we were for the earlier invasions. We just don't seem to
Yes.
learn.
So the combination of external Pakistan, China, with all this technology, China want to grab land and grab the rivers, and Pakistan want to do all the things that they've always wanted to do against India. This alliance is a very solid alliance. China has thought out long and hard to mortgage. Pakistan has mortgaged its future financially. They have no choice, but they're now in debt to China. And Chinese don't understand South Asian culturally. The India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka type people, they don't really understand them culturally, and they're not very comfortable bossing over them direct man-to-man contact. So they'll outsource that part to the Pakistanis. The Pakistanis have sold the idea to the Chinese that they know how to look after Indians, how to manage them, how to be their boss. After all, the Mughals did it, so they can return to that era, and they can be like the return of the Mughals in a sense. And they're looking for China to give them the hard power. China to give them the hard power, and Pakistan can do the dirty work, boots on the ground. This is a very serious issue India faces, and this AI exacerbates it. And the breaking India forces on the internal side, breaking India forces are the internal vulnerability. Pakistan, China are the external threat. The two in combination, I don't think India can survive.
So are you saying we'll be wiped out?
So I do a stress test.
Yeah, that's right. That's another phrase you use. You're stress testing India.
When you go to a doctor,
it's like a litmus test.
So when you go to a doctor, stress test is to find out what your tolerance limits are, how much work you can do before the heart cannot do any further. And these parameters, this data helps the doctor figure out where to improve you, what diet you need, how much exercise is safe, not safe. So the stress test gives you a parameters of the system. And we need to stress test India like a system, and say what happens if AI hits at this time, in this way, these applications, these technologies, scenario where China does this, scenario where China does that, scenario under breaking India forces. So I'm working out these scenarios as to what are the plausible and likely things that AI could trigger and what would happen to India. So I've broken my stress test into 3 levels. There is the sthula sharir, and the sukshma sharir, and the karan sharir. So the impact of AI on each of these, the relationship of AI on each of these you can look at. The sthula sharir is the physical body. So if the physical body, what's the impact on economy? What's the impact on jobs? What the impact on inequalities, haves and have-nots? Maybe certain regions like Bangalore will do very well. New industries will be created and they'll thrive. But maybe the old industries and the labor force in Bihar and UP or wherever, some other places will not do so well. Maybe some industrial economy will do very well and the people dependent on farms will be worse off. So that needs to be sorted out. That's at the level of sthula sharir. And even the military is an issue at the sthula sharir level, the whole military issue. The sukshma sharir is the mental thing we were talking about, the loss of agency, becoming colonized mentally, becoming more dependent on AI and digital media, and somebody else controls that. Somebody else decides, am I a winner or a loser? Who is more popular? All of this is in the hands of somebody else, and we are loving these devatas, these foreign devatas. So that is the stress test showing that at the sukshma sharir level, we're highly vulnerable. We're not very autonomous. We do not have our own sovereignty. We did not develop these platforms ourselves. And when even 6 months ago, when Jio sold out so much to these foreign guys, there were no safeguards placed. They didn't even want to take my article, which is a section of this book. I have a section in this book called India is for Sale. India, the article like that in this book is called India is for Sale.
Yeah,
I have another
that.
one called, the Return of the East India Company. At the very least, they could have allowed my discussion, my points. So maybe they could have included something in their negotiation, but they're not interested. So the sukshma sharir of India is vulnerable right from the top to the bottom, because I don't see leadership. I don't see the leadership understanding these things. So their mind represents the sukshma sharir of India. The average person is becoming more moronized. So that's the sukshma sharir. As far as the karan sharir is concerned, it has to do with what's our character like. Karmically, are we really fit? Are we kind of opportunistic? Are we too much into corruption? Are we too much into me, mine? And I see a problem there also. So my stress test on India shows that India is quite vulnerable during this decade. And I'm not talking about 50 years from now. I'm not saying, in the next century something could happen. I'm saying before 2030, cracks in India's sovereignty will become undeniable.
They already are. But let's get on to the next question, which is, I think you already touched upon it. One of the recent policies that seriously harmed India. And I think you were referring to the Geo sale, right?
That's one example. That's a good example. Another one
Yeah.
is that several years ago, I exposed the fact that Harvard University and several other universities are surveilling on the Kumbh Mela. And I wrote a book. I wrote a lot of articles. I went on YouTube. Kumbh Mela, they had something called mapping the Kumbh Mela, which is actually surveillance and gathering big data. They're plotting, where do these 100 million people come from, which villages, what jati, what caste, what's the power structure, what's the religion, So they're mapping all this data when they interview these people, along with facial recognition, and figuring out at the village level, at the district level, what's the social, political demographics going on, who's at war with whom. And then they want to come up with human rights cases based on this, that, maybe there's an exploitation going on, or maybe in this Kumbh Mela, male have more.
No, also conversion mafias are setting up base there, even in the Kumbh Mela.
I was the first person who wrote this many, many years ago. This is before Modi's time. And I then somebody translated my article into Hindi. They made a booklet, and then they made lakhs of copies and distributed them at the Kumbh Mela. In fact, a lot of people told me this is very eye-opening. A lot of gurus noticed it. A lot of our leaders noticed it. So I thought that I'm winning an argument that says that instead of foreign people coming and mapping the Kumbh Mela, we should have our own people mapping the Kumbh Mela. We have enough knowledge to do that. Then when Yogi Adityanath became CM, somebody told me, you should go and present it to him because he's an action guy. He'll do it. I went to Lucknow. I stayed there 2 nights in his VIP guest house. I was looked after very nicely. He sat with me. I gave him my report. I gave him my PowerPoint presentation. He was sitting there there were 8 or 10 Babu types. They must have been IAS people or whatever. They look like government officials. And so he was listening very carefully. And he said, "Ke haan, theek hai, aap inse." He asked his people to follow up with me, understand this, take some action. And he reassured me, कि, हाँ, आप घबराए ना, हम ये नहीं होने देंगे, like that. So I came back, I got no follow up, typical style, no follow up. And I worked very hard to firstly do the research and publish it, and then go to them and present it to them. Then I saw 2-3 years later an article, and I can show you. Article where press release that Yogi Adityanath announces that he has invited these 7 or 8 Western researchers to come and study the Kumbh Mela. So he did exactly the opposite. Now, what happened? I talked to some people in Harvard and various places that, off the record, told me basically they just schmooze these people. They basically wine and dine and brought some of these guys from state level ministries over to the US and made them look like they're very big shots. Some ministers also came, and now we are into the BJP era and we are into the Yogi Adityanath era. I was so disgusted that complete disregard for my research, not a chance to debate and argue, and complete slap on the face that I'm arguing against the Harvards of the world, and they have now put me aside and invited them in a big way. And I find that this is a kind of corruption. Maybe there's no money involved, maybe nobody got bribed, but even a foreign trips and making them feel good and look good and all that is a kind of emotional bribing. So what details happened, I don't want to get into. What happened behind the scenes is not verified. Some people only told me. I put out a tweet saying that I was very disappointed that the Kumbh Mela, as a very unique source of diverse data about diversity of population, a diversity of population in every sense of the word. There's no other place where you can get 100 million, kind of a crucible with 100 million such people in one place and study them. And this huge big data, which is invaluable for machine learning and all that, because AI becomes smarter and smarter when you throw more diverse big data at it. And this is a very precious thing. So I put this tweet out, and would you believe, while it's very interesting, those who know AI, those who know machine learning sympathized with me and said, this is very important, and they started tweeting that Yogi Adityanath should reconsider and all that. But the other half of the people accusing me, saying, oh, he is such a great guy, why are you accusing him? There must be some reason for it. They have no clue. Some of them saying, if they study us, it's good for us. I said, Arre bhaiya, you are the target of surveillance and you are feeling important as a result of it. So I must tell you that at least half the people commenting are morons, completely clueless about what I'm saying. And then when I said, here is a book you should read, here's a chapter within a book, here are some excerpts from the book you can read, here are some videos I've done, the people are so lazy. They have no interest in actually getting the facts and actually understanding it. So this is part of the reason that I felt very frustrated.
What you had to say about the young people who are doing cutting-edge research in AI, whether in American universities or some even in IITs in India? How do you rate them? Are they anywhere?
So there's two kinds. No, that's a very good question. Indians are among the cutting edge of AI brains in the world. That is, a certain percentage of AI people in the world are brilliant people. But they are working either in the United States or Europe and they are doing make in America, not make in India. So the intellectual property they produce is not Indian. It is belonging to somebody else. The ones who are remaining in India and doing cutting edge work are working for Microsoft India, Google India, Facebook India. They're working while in India, they're working for the Westerners. So only a very tiny...
So intellectual coolies.
They are AI coolies. So the large majority are not doing this kind of cutting edge work. The large majority of India who are learning data sciences and machine learning are going to do coolie work. So that kind of work will be the temporary work, just like outsourcing and call center. AI needs next 5 to 10 years, it needs a lot of coolie work, and then that will be dismantled and folded, just like call centers, many of them have. So during this transition phase, to train machines, you need humans. So for instance, on a conveyor belt in Amazon, so some packets are going and the cameras are going. Now you have to train the camera which is upright, when is the packet upright, when is the box fallen. So human being is going to tag that this picture is correct, the package was correct, here it has fallen. So in other words, the human it's called tagging, labeling. This is labor intensive. Human brain is to label images. so that the machine can say, oh, this is the image of one kind of item, this is an image of another kind of item, that sort of thing. It's sort of like if we wanted to take all the academic people in India and have image recognition of all of them, then somebody would have to manually, human beings would be needed to say, okay, this is Madhu Kishwar, this one is Madhu Kishwar, this one is so and so, this one is so and so. For you have to tag them, and then the machines can take over, and you don't need human beings anymore because machines can do all this recognition. So we are at a stage. AI in the Western countries needs human beings to do labeling and tagging, and that kind of work is being exported to India. And we think we have trained a lot of AI people, but they are doing rudimentary, low-level coolie work. This is not going to produce technology.
Is Make in India at all addressing AI?
So a few venture capital people are in it. I congratulate them. Very little, very late. Too little, too late. The total size of the Indian venture capital is a tiny portion of US, China, and Europe, and so on. So it's not like we're going to produce a huge amount, but we will produce something. It's better than before. Even the venture capital in India, a large amount of the venture capital money and ownership comes from foreign venture capitalists. So what is happening is, even when an Indian does a startup, his dream is that when somebody will buy him out and he is worth a few $100 million, he'll sell out to this American venture capital company, or Google will buy him out. So the exit. So what is happening is, we are making some people very rich as individuals. The intellectual property does not belong to the country. The intellectual property belongs to somebody elsewhere. And so Make in India is manufacturing, but not R&D. There's a difference. The viewers should understand the difference between R&D and manufacturing. So manufacturing you can do, but you are getting imported know-how, and you're always dependent on them. And when the world standard goes to the next generation, you have to go back, beg your way, and get some more know-how. So we are not investing in R&D. The corporate people are not investing in R&D. The DRDO is investing in R&D, but not enough. The academic people are more into politics. In the United States, when you are a graduate student, you're working for professors who got research grants, and they are making you do research. Here it is just teaching and not research. Besides teaching, it's politics. So we are not a research-oriented society. When we say we are knowledge-oriented, this knowledge of past 5,000 years ago, उसने ये किया था, वहां पर ये विमान था, ये वो था, is not what it takes. You got to keep up with the.
वहां पे भी रिसर्च कहाँ की है? उस पास्ट की भी तो रिसर्च नहीं ढंग से कर रहे, वो भी तो neglected है.
So I'll tell you, I was very disappointed. I've mentioned this quote in my book here. Uday Kotak, one of the, you would think he's very great for India, and he's probably a nice guy. I've never met him, but one of the things he says is that his aspiration is that just like the urbanites in India, young people in the urban areas are getting jobs with Microsoft and Google and all that. He would like that villagers should also get these jobs. Now, I said you're making villagers also coolies. You're turning villagers into the tech coolies, menial jobs. Why aren't you saying that Tata's and Infosys and Reliance and 10 others like that should invest their billions of dollars and create Indian technology, take on the Google of the world, take on the Microsoft of the world? The strange thing is, Madhu, when you go to these tech companies, you will find a very large part of the R&D brains are Indians. You go to the New York banks, where they're doing AI banking and AI. You go to medical places, and New Jersey has a lot of drug discovery pharmaceuticals, from Johnson & Johnson to, all these, big, huge worldwide pharma companies are New Jersey based, most of them. You find a large amount of Indians there. So any industry you go to, the AI-based research, AI-based discovery, you'll find Indians there. But that is not technology for India. So let's be clear on, let's not mix up between Indians doing the work and feeling very proud of it versus India as an organization, as an institution owning the intellectual property. They're two different things.
Rajiv, many of us were harboring this illusion that Pakistan is going to break up, implode. And therefore, it's going to be very sooner than later. A lot of people think this dream of Akhand Bharat will come true because Balochistan is exploding, Sindh is exploding, and Pakistan is in dire trouble. But what picture you're painting is this formidable combination of China and Pakistan, who together are now into cutting edge AI. And they're obviously managing the politics of India, it seems, not only Singhu border, but also micromanaging the political narrative in India, possibly through very intelligent use of AI.
So Pakistan may also break up, but that doesn't help us. I mean, we break them up and they break us. The point is, it's bad for us. The whole of South Asia becomes again available as a fighting places where foreign people will come and grab. Maybe US will grab some territory, China will grab some, who knows. But I see that happening. The fact that Pakistan may be a failed state may be true, but is India going to be, how resilient is India is my concern. And that is the stress test. How India resilient? If you have 1.3 billion becoming 1.5 billion, a large percent of them, for whatever reason, whether it's the fault of the bottom of the pyramid, top of the pyramid, combination, whatever the reasons are, the fact is at the end of the day, they are not viable, they're not able to make their ends meet. And here comes new technology. We can't afford to do without it because we'll be uncompetitive. If we put too much of it, then a lot of these people will lose their jobs. So when people lose jobs, whether it is the migrant workers or whoever, it's a field day for Breaking India forces. So Breaking India forces are thriving on this, that all these things will happen. A lot of people will be out of work, so we got to convert this guy, convert that guy, make that guy Maoist, whatever they're going to do. So the Breaking India forces will benefit many ways. One is the fallout of unemployment is good for them because it creates more chaos. Second is that these tools of psychological management is very good for them because they can use these tools to create problems. Surveillance, they can blackmail leaders. I have been saying for a very long time that they should ban government officials from using Gmail because it's all of it is available for reading. So probably they have dossiers on how to blackmail this fellow, that fellow, because they know what he's up to in his private life. India doesn't have that kind of a data protection. I have received from some of the highest levels of security some private email, for something, some information or whatever that they thought I might give it. Whether I give or not is another matter. But it's on Gmail. And so I wonder what kind of, these are generals or defense people or security people or people in some government, establishment somewhere. And they're sending you messages here and there in social media. There is a huge crisis of AI related disruption of India, undermining of India, colonizing of India, blackmailing, creating civil wars that India has not understood.
I mean, and the Indian elite is so amenable to being bribed. China has been taking journalists, teams and teams of journalists. And mind you, they apparently tell them that if they're married, please come alone. They don't allow wives to accompany them. And almost each one of them, nearly 2,000 journalists apparently have been compromised in this manner, because once they go there, then they are offered wining, dining, and womanizing. And then all those, and that is not even artificial intelligence, that's just plain human intelligence and little hidden cameras in their bedrooms, in their hotel rooms. And so you have so many of them who are willing to tune into whatever song China wants them to sing or XYZ wants them to sing. So already we were so vulnerable. What you're saying makes me shiver with fright. I don't know. Now this book of yours, will it help the enemies of India by further exposing our vulnerabilities, or they're already aware of it? You are just trying to ring the alarm bell for the rulers here.
Yeah. So, I'll tell you something. I spent 5 years going around privately. That's why you didn't hear from me. I gave hints of what I'm writing, but I didn't disclose because I wanted that somebody somewhere will take me seriously and say, okay, now tell us more. I don't want any money. I don't want any posts. Don't care damn about all that because that's all nonsense. I mean, that's not merit oriented anyway. So I don't want to be part of that kind of game. that it's not like I'm square in a search and hunting for some kind of some link and association. I just wanted to share knowledge with people who would take it seriously and do something about it. And I would be shunted from this to that, go meet there, talk to this fellow, I pick up the phone, set up an appointment, go, he'll meet you. And I was always received with great hospitality, nice khana they would give. Some minister would invite me to his house, invite a lot of people. It's like shoshagiri and good tamasha. And if I wanted that, it was, I would say, gee, I'm doing very well. But my goal is how to get this into their heads and get actually actionable decision making, policy making. I was not successful. So then I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to go public and I'm going to write this to the public and let the chips fall where they may. And if they don't like it, they don't like it, because I've given them a chance to deal with me, privately, but they're not interested. So about a year and a half ago, I think it was early 2019, I was sitting in, I've had this conversation with several people, but one was a breakfast meeting in Bangalore in my hotel. And this young lady comes and she's working with me very closely. She's a very brilliant person, very much on my side. So I was giving her this, insight, spent 2 hours giving her my thesis. And so she's somebody who says, you should not publish this. I said, why? You will give ideas to our enemies. She said that to me. And I said, you are underestimating our enemies. They already know these things. It's our own leaders who don't know these things. So enemies already know these things. Then I went and gave, there's a Dehradun festival called Valley of Words, which is run by some Masuri, the IAS Academy people in Masuri. They run this literary festival. So in 2019, I was the keynote speaker. And would you believe my whole talk, I have a video, I'm now going to put it out there. My whole talk was on artificial intelligence and the crash of civilization and the threat to population, the threat to human rights in India, the threat to this whole BI 2.0, this whole use of social justice as a new weapon with the expanded with the use of AI. I talked about all this, and I talked about the core ideas that you and I have been talking about. Luckily, the only video was our team. Our team had 2-3 cameras and we were doing the videos. The Q&A, people were so stirred up. So one guy took me to lunch afterwards and said, I want to beg you, do not talk about this because, we are all scared now. So I said, but we are all scared now. So I said, okay, you're scared of the prognosis, but what are you going to do about it? So I again went into this business that maybe I'll delay my thing. So it only, I would have gotten this book out a year ago, but then the pandemic came. Then I decided, you know what, I'm going to get it out. So I have played with this idea that am I giving ideas, scenarios? And in a sense, yes, I am. People can pick up these scenarios, but I think these are very smart people already who are into all these AI and national security and geopolitics. They're very smart people. I talked to American people who are into this field and some Europeans, and I'm going to see if they'll come out in public and do videos with me in public, because so far it's private conversations. They know these scenarios. They all feel that India is sitting on it's a huge potential that could fall apart. Indians need to understand it now. Now it's enough of pandering to the government and pampering to the government and sucking up to the government. The common person in India needs to know. They need to know that the leadership is not just about winning elections and knocking out that regional power.
No, we're still not done with literacy and numeracy. We are actually de-skilling India. That process which started during colonial rule of de-skilling India is still continuing at a ferocious pace. Now, what you're saying is that a country which failed to even provide decent literacy, numeracy skills is now going to face with this new monster. Yes. And the others have raised ahead. We don't even know how to spell it, leave alone understand its intricacies and its potential of disrupting India. So, Rajiv, for the moment, we'll conclude here. I'll start the next episode with you on it because there's still a few more questions I'd like to ask you. The question I'm going to start with is, what is it that triggered your interest in this topic? Because you were doing a whole lot of other things. And suddenly, this is indeed a new field. You've opened many new doors. So that's the question I'd like to start with in the
I will
next
love it.
episode.
And your interviewing style is always very nice, very thought provoking. I also it stimulates ideas, and I think we have good chemistry. So I'm looking forward to this very much. And thank you one more time for this.
Honor to be able to talk to you in this easy, relaxed manner. But it's the manner may be relaxed, but the information you're sharing is truly disturbing. And I hope people start taking notice. Thank you, Rajiv.
Thank you very much.